Hello, and thank you for choosing PALFINGER. This video is meant for instructional purposes only. Before operating any PALFINGER service crane, PSC, the operator's manual must be thoroughly reviewed and understood. Always follow your company and/or regionally mandated operating safety policies. Let's get started. Walk around the vehicle to make sure that there are no obstructions that could interfere with crane operations, especially overhead clearances. Check to make sure that all warning decals are placed correctly and are clearly visible and undamaged. Pay close attention to the ground conditions where the vehicle is parked, ensuring that it is not more than 5 degrees out of level. Loose ground or hot asphalt will require outrigger pads for proper gripping. At all times, the fluid levels of both the truck and crane need to be within the defined range. Never operate PALFINGER equipment if you notice any damages or malfunctioning of structural components, hydraulic, electric, or electronic systems. PALFINGER service cranes are either hydraulically or electro-hydraulically powered. For a hydraulic crane, start the truck engine and engage the parking brake. Once the truck is idling smoothly and the parking brake is engaged, turn on your PTO. For electric cranes, the engine does not need to be running with the parking brake engaged. Turn the operation key, which is located in the crane compartment, to the on position. The service crane can only be operated without deployment of the outriggers and outrigger cylinders if the purpose is for lubrication or maintenance. For any other purposes, the outriggers need to be deployed. To properly set up the crane, open the crane compartment. The outriggers are controlled by the 3 handles you see mounted to the shelf. Non-hydraulic outriggers have to be deployed manually. Operate the handle controlling the street side stabilizer first until the outrigger is touching the ground with firm contact. Next, disengage the manual lock of the curbside outrigger and fully extend it. Then deploy the curbside outrigger cylinder until firm contact is made. Level the truck using the outriggers while referring to the bubble level supplied. To deploy the crane, pick up your remote control and find a spot where you can safely watch the operation of the crane. To start the remote control, press and hold the E-stop button. Then, while continuing to hold this button, press and hold the secondary function button located next to it. Release the secondary function button followed by the E-stop button. You should hear a beep and the light in the middle of the remote should turn red. You are now linked up and ready to use your crane. All crane functions are proportional. The further you depress the button, the faster the crane function will operate. Prior to operating the crane, you must activate the crane horn by holding down your secondary function button and pressing the horn button. This will sound the horn integrated in the crane base, alerting nearby persons that crane operation is about to begin. Start by gently depressing the boom up button on the remote until the boom and head have cleared any obstacles. Once clear, you can start to rotate the crane clockwise until you are clear of the body. At this point, you can pay out winch cable and lower the boom all the way down for access to the load block. Next, pay out more winch cable until there is sufficient slack to allow the load block to be removed from the stowing bracket. Have a look at the winch drum and the load block to ensure the winch cable is properly reeved and in good condition. Check the load hook for excessive wear or deformation. Also, the safety latch needs to operate properly. When operating the crane, it is important to understand the PALFINGER service crane radio remote control. Each crane and winch function on the remote is proportional and activated by depressing or releasing the button smoothly. The further you depress the button, the faster the function will operate. Conversely, slowly retracting the button allows the function to slow. The button can be released quickly to stop any function. Every remote is equipped with 8 crane and winch functions, as well as 6 additional functions. Emergency stop. Depressing the emergency stop will shut off all crane functions. The radio remote must be restarted after the E-stop is activated. This feature should be checked daily. Engine on. Press and hold the secondary function button, followed by the engine on button to start the engine. Engine off. Press and hold the secondary function button, followed by the engine off button to stop the engine. High-low idle. Press and hold the secondary function button, followed by the high idle button to increase or decrease engine idle. Compressor on-off. Press and hold the secondary function button, followed by the compressor button to turn the compressor on or off. Warning horn. Press and hold the secondary function button, followed by the horn button to sound the horn. The back of every remote features a magnet to allow the remote to be placed in its cradle or on a metal work surface in order to help keep the remote clear of dirt and mud. Every remote comes with two AA nickel-cadmium rechargeable batteries. They can be recharged using the 12-volt plug supplied in any 12-volt chassis or upfitter outlet. The radio remote transmitter also works with non-rechargeable batteries. In case such batteries are in use, never try to charge these. It will result in damaging the remote control. For instructions on how to properly recharge your remote batteries, refer to the crane operator's manual. Hydraulic-powered cranes have 400 degrees of slewing angle, while electric hydraulic cranes are equipped with continuous rotation. To ensure a long crane lifetime, it's recommended to avoid hitting the rotation stop of a hydraulic crane, especially when the crane is lifting a load. The telescopic mechanism is internally mounted inside the crane booms and is maintenance-free on the PALFINGER service crane. It is important to remember to pay or retract the winch cable out when extending or retracting the telescopic booms. Even though the winch is protected by a winch damage prevention system, hitting the boom tip with the load block is classified as an unsafe operation and must be avoided. PALFINGER service cranes are equipped with hydraulic or electric-driven planetary winches. As mentioned before, all winches are equipped standard with a winch damage prevention system. The system is integrated in the winch assembly and works parallel to the crane overload system. It measures the winch line load while the crane is operated and shuts off all crane functions, which would increase the line load in case of an overload situation. This eliminates the need for Bales limit switches on the boom tip and a retractable electrical reel. PALFINGER cranes are the only cranes equipped with this system. It meets all ANSI and OSHA requirements. PALFINGER service cranes are equipped standard with an overload protection system. This system will stop crane functions when an overload condition occurs, but allow functions to operate to relieve an overload condition. Find the crane load chart on the vehicle. If there is not one present, do not operate the crane and see a PALFINGER service partner. Knowing the weight of what is to be lifted or positioned by the service crane is paramount. If it is not known, it should not be lifted. The operator must refer to the load chart and plan the lift accordingly. Determine where the load rests and where it must be positioned. This determines the load radius, which is the distance from the center of rotation to the load line, and the load height, which is the height of the boom tip when the load gets placed. Once the load radius, and the load height are determined, use the load chart to see if the crane is capable of performing the planned lift. A limiting factor is the working load limit of the winch line. This is denoted on the chart by a box that surrounds the capacity in question. Boxed capacities require two-part line equipment, and unboxed capacities can be achieved also with single-part line equipment. After the work has been completed, position the crane with booms retracted and winch line lowered appropriately to allow a winch line hook to be stowed on the boom. Attach winch line hook to the boom and position the crane over the boom rest. Retract any slack in the winch line and carefully lower the boom onto the boom rest. Retract the outriggers accordingly. And lastly, disengage the PTO before moving the vehicle. When operating an electric crane, make sure the main disconnect switch is in off position before moving the vehicle. PALFINGER service cranes are equipped standard with an emergency manual override system if for some reason your crane remote becomes unusable and you need to stow your crane. Remove the plastic plug on the black protective cover of the crane pedestal or open the protective cover on smaller PALFINGER service cranes. Locate the override valve on the inlet block of the control valve. Break the safety wire and manually turn the valve clockwise to activate the manual controls. You will start to hear the hydraulic fluid flowing once the valve has been turned to the appropriate level. With electro-hydraulic cranes, you must manually activate the pump by pressing and holding the switch on the cover. For hydraulic cranes, use the PALFINGER-supplied wrench and attach it to the appropriate function labeled on the rear of the crane pedestal. The placards on the rear of the crane determine the direction of each crane function. Smaller PALFINGER service cranes will have levers already attached to these hydraulic manual overrides as standard. No wrench is needed. Attention! Smaller cranes lose their proportionality when in emergency operations mode. Continue these operations until the crane is properly stowed and can be taken in for repair. All the overload protection system of the crane are inoperative when the emergency operation mode is active. Never perform a lift with the manual controls. Safety and warning placards located on the crane compartment door, the crane body, and the outriggers must be understood and followed. The operator must thoroughly read and understand the operator's manual, which should always be kept with the vehicle. Please refer to the operator and maintenance manual for lubrication requirements and winch line inspection procedures. Always work safely, wear the appropriate safety gear, and use the appropriate safety devices and rigging equipment when operating the crane. This crane is not an insulated device. Contact or proximity to energized conductors must be avoided. Please see the operator's manual for required safety distances to power lines. PALFINGER service cranes are intended to help you do your job safely and efficiently. As the operator, you are responsible for understanding its controls and limitations. Should you find any malfunctions or damage to the crane or transport vehicle, it is your responsibility to notify the necessary personnel. Safety begins with you. Thank you for taking the time to educate yourself on the safe and proper operation of your PALFINGER service crane.